This is chapters 36 through 40 of Lock the Doors. 36. Before Jay paints over the words, I take a picture and he gives me a funny look but doesn't ask why. If he scrolled through my phone, he'd see lots of strange things, like Amy's house the way it appears from my window, and her parents and brother looking like ghosts through 2 sets of double glazing. And now, hundreds of tiny pleas in writing I need to compare with Amy's before I can be certain. It's not until the room is magnolia all over that I realize how far the words stretched. Without them, the walls look empty. I message Zach asking if he's free, and 10 minutes later, I'm watching his dad chase his brother around the living room while his mom feeds his sister in her high chair. Zach's house is carnage, but I love it. He was an only child like me until he was 10, and then suddenly he wasn't. Harrison is 6, Ivy's nearly 1, and Zach's parents look like they need a rest. But they're always pleased to see me, and sometimes I wonder how my life would look if Dad hadn't left. Would I have siblings, real ones that didn't resent me? I can't imagine Mom with another kid, but that's only because of how life worked out. She jokes with Jay that she's too old for a baby now. We go to Zach's room for some peace, and he flops on his bed. How's the spying mission going? I ignore him because that's not what I want to talk about, but he laughs and says, "You know I love you, man, but you have to let this go." I didn't say anything. You brought it up. It's all over your face, Tom. It's literally all you're thinking about. I've seen you worry about a lot of things. I know what that looks like. You think I'm being stupid? No, I think you watch too many crime shows. But everything's a clue, you know? Some things are just things. He's right, but it's not just the things that are bothering me. It's the feelings that go with them. When I see the holes in my door, I think of what bad people do to keep good people trapped. I think of Martin and Gary and all the monsters I've ever met. I think of what happens behind front doors that look just like ours but hide something terrible. We've lived behind those doors, so I know they exist, and I know there are people out there who lock others in because it's just what they do. And when I think of the words on my wall, I imagine the person writing them. I feel their fear and picture their frantic hands working in the dark, pleading to no one but themselves. I picture those things because I've lived them. I remember them because Mom and I felt trapped for so much longer than we should have. I could tell Zach because he knows about my old life, except sometimes I worry that it's a story he doesn't want to hear over and over again. I know he'd listen, and I know he'd understand, but I feel guilty for reminding him of a version of me he never knew. Instead, I say, "One of us is right." He nods like he knows it's him, and I sigh, desperately hoping it's not me. Ooh, Chapter 37. I need to know one way or the other if Amy wrote the words on my wall. If I ask her again, she'll say no, but that's not the only possible answer. The only way to be certain is to compare her handwriting with the scribbles now hidden beneath 3 coats of paint. Whenever I get too close to her notebook, she puts it away, and I wonder what she didn't want me to see. Is it what she's written or how she wrote it? We're at lunch when it happens. Amy stands up and says, "I'm going to the bathroom." And perhaps it's because she trusts us now, or maybe she forgets or doesn't care, but she leaves her bag under her seat. I watch her leave the cafeteria, then pull it close and unzip it. "What are you doing?" Zach asks, but I don't answer. Her notebook is wedged at the bottom, and as I pull it out, something else comes with it. A t-shirt way too small for her. "Put it back," Zach whispers. "Just tell me when she's coming. She'll freak if she catches you." I stare at him. "Then make sure she doesn't." I open the notebook to a random page. It doesn't matter what it says. I'm looking at the patterns in the words, the curls, and the joins. Then I point my phone at the pad and take 3 quick pictures. I do the same with other pages, then pull a few more things out of her bag and place it back where it was. "Hurry up," Zach says, but when I follow his line of sight, he's still staring at an empty doorway. It's not just a t-shirt. There's a tiny pair of trousers and a mustard-colored jacket that looks like it would fit Aaron. I pause, even though I should be rushing, because it's not what I expected to find. "What do you think these are for?" I ask, and when Zach shakes his head and lets out a panicked squeak, I tuck them back in Amy's bag, zip it closed, and shove it under her chair. "What the fuck?" Zach asks. "I need to see her writing, okay?" But all he says in reply is, "Amy," and a few seconds later she sits down and smiles. "What did I miss?" Zach looks at me and I shrug and say, "Nothing important." I want to leave immediately, but it's another 15 minutes before the bell rings for 5th period. When I'm alone, I scroll through the photos of Amy's writing and then the words on my wall. I zoom in, looking for the slightest suggestion that they were written by the same person, but they don't match. Amy's writing is neat and flowing, while the tiny army of help me's are jagged and untidy. They look as if they were done in a rush, whereas Amy's journal is like art. She embellishes everything, adding hearts and swirls and doodles. It's not until I look past the patterns and read the words that I start to panic. I see it in the way he looks at me. He can't possibly know the truth, but he knows something isn't right, and I don't think he's going to stop digging. Ooh. 38. When the doorbell sounds, I ignore it because it's never for me. It takes 3 shouts from Mom before I realize I'm wanted. "You have a visitor," she says with a smile that makes me nervous. And when I'm halfway down the stairs, I stop in shock because Amy's there, her grin even wider than Mom's. "Surprise," Amy says. Mom lets out a tiny laugh. Come in, come in." "What are you doing here?" I ask. Mom gives me a look that says I'm being rude, but she doesn't speak because she's trying to figure out what's going on, and she's not the only one. Girls don't visit me. No one visits me except Zach, and my mother looks flustered in case this is a big deal, and she should have prepared for it. "I'm Amy," she says, and when Mom shakes her hand, she adds, "I lived here before you did. Tom thinks my parents locked me in my bedroom." Mom stares at me, then says, "He worries too much. I tell him, but he has his ways." This is how she explains my OCD and my anxiety. She turns them into a quirk. I'm surprised Mom said anything because she's usually too embarrassed. Sometimes she blames herself. She thinks I'd be different if our family had worked the first time around. Mom worries about my worries more than I do. I just live with them. "So, your school friends?" she asks. "Tom was the first person I met at school. He made a good impression." She's being weird, and we both know it. Amy catches my eye, and I wonder if she knows I went through her bag. Is this payback, or is she just fooling around? Mom leads her into the kitchen where Jay is working on his laptop and says, "Tom has a visitor." She practically sings it, and he stands and rubs Mom's shoulders. I can see that. Amy introduces herself again, and I'm jealous of her confidence. But then, this isn't unfamiliar territory. I wonder if, in a way, she feels like we're guests in her house rather than the other way around. "Would you like a cup of tea?" Mom asks Amy. "No, thank you." That's not the answer Mom was expecting. There's a faint ripple of panic in her cheeks before Jay says, "Perhaps we should leave them to it." "It's fine," I say a bit too quickly. "Amy was telling Mom she used to live here. How weird is that?" Jay tilts his head and says, "So, how do you know each other?" "I go to the same school now," Amy says. "I used to go to the..." I turn to see what she's looking at, and Nia's in the doorway. "We have a guest," Mom says, but Amy isn't smiling anymore. She stares at Nia, growing paler by the second, until my stepsister catches her eyes and says, "What's this?" I think of the photos that Amy haunted, the party that Nia was also at. They were almost as close as they are now. Amy shrinks into herself, like she did the day we met, while Nia stares at her, then me, then back again. "This is Amy," I say, and my stepsister looks at her for a little too long. "I should go," Amy mumbles. Mom looks worried, like she's offended the first proper visitor I've ever had. But it's not her, it's Nia. And Amy's not offended. She's scared. She walks into the hallway, opens the door, and leaves without looking back. "See you," she calls, but I don't reply because I'm trying to figure out what just happened. "She's a nice girl," Mom says, even if it sounds like she's trying to convince herself. "She's weird," Nia replies, but brushing past us and going up to her room. I follow her because I have to know. Something doesn't add up, and my stepsister is the only one who can help. "Are you sure you don't know her?" Nia gives me a death stare until I step back, moving from her bedroom to the landing. "Why would I know her?" "Because she was at your school. Her name's Amy. She went to the same parties." Nia shakes her head. "A lot of people go to those parties." I don't push it. Either Nia's lying, which doesn't make sense, or she genuinely doesn't know her. There are kids at my school who slip under the radar. I'm probably one of them. But surely people would recognize my face even if they forgot my name. Amy looked genuinely shocked when Nia turned up. We get that sometimes when we tell people we're sort of related, and you can see the cogs turning as they figure out the hows and the whys. It's the same when Mom says her surname is Nakasa and strangers can't hide their surprise. But Amy wasn't surprised. She was terrified. 39. She came to my house, I say, and she carries around kids' clothes and is writing about me in her journal, saying I can't possibly know the truth. Zach rubs his mouth and says, "Dude, you know I love you, but I think you're self-sabotaging." "What are you talking about?" "I've been doing some research and it's a thing. I think you like this girl. A lot. and you're trying to rescue her when you should be asking her out. Did you not hear what I said? Yes, that's the problem. When you were dancing with Amy, I've never seen you that happy. So what if she came over? Maybe she likes you. And everything else? It's always a mistake reading someone's diary, Tom. You can easily get the wrong idea. And the kids' clothes? Zach shakes his head. I don't know. Maybe they're for her brother or her cousins. Why are you so desperate to solve a mystery that might not even exist? Because no one helped my mom. The clues were there, but no one saw them. I think of Martin pointing the gun at her and imagine what might have been. It's a thought I have to scrunch my eyes and squeeze my fist to crush before it swallows me. I know what you've been through, Zach says. So why not try being happy? I get ready to argue, but he's right. Mixed with my fear and uncertainty is that night at Sensorium. I was happy, and then Amy's dad gripped my hand and squeezed all that happiness out of me. But sometimes I can still see the strobes flash across her face and remember a yelled conversation chopped into pieces by the beat. For once, my anxiety wasn't pushed to the side, it vanished. What if I'm right? I ask. Zach raises his eyebrows. What if you're wrong? 40. I have Zach's words in my head on repeat. It's the only way to drown out the fears. There's more than one. There's the fear that I'm right and Amy is in trouble. There's the fear that I'm wrong, but I'll never stop worrying. And there's the fear that comes when you're about to ask a girl out for the first time ever, but you've forgotten how to speak. Do it, Zach says, nudging me until my legs take over, and I'm 5, 4, 3 steps behind her. Hey, I say. Amy turns around and says, there you are. She talks like we're more than this, and I want my thoughts to catch up to hers. But I've never had a girlfriend. I've never even been on a date. Zach is staring from across the courtyard, and I can already sense his disappointment. Maybe next time, he'll say, only his words will be tinged with the feeling of failure. Mine, not his. I think of Mom taking a chance on Dad, then another on Jay. Not all her decisions were disasters. Then I swallow my nausea and say, I was wondering if Amy's eyes lock onto mine and don't let go. She knows what's coming. I'm too obvious and too tragic, and she doesn't laugh. She smiles and waits, and somehow I squeeze out the question. You wanted to do something with me? Sure, she says. She sees Zach over my shoulder and waves. Then she kisses my cheek and says, I've got to go. Amy walks toward the science block until she's lost in the crowd. It's weird how school works. There are hundreds of us, but we only notice a few. If things were different, I wouldn't know her at all. Well, Zach says. I breathe out and say, what do people do on dates? He slaps me on the back and shakes his head. I have no idea.